All right. Good morning. Hello from Knoxville, Tennessee, the United States. This is the FreeCAD North American Meetup 2026. It's August 8th, 2026, not 2027, so I already have discovered a mistake in my own slides. That's great. There will be more of that to come, I am sure. So welcome in. My name is Chris Hennes. I'm one of the maintainers of FreeCAD, and I'm here to talk to you about FreeCAD, the upcoming release of FreeCAD 26.3, talk to you about what's new. Technically, my formal title is STEAM Specialist for Pioneer Library System in Oklahoma, USA. That's my day job. But I'm also a project administrator with the FreeCAD Project Association. I work on FreeCAD as a developer, as a maintainer, and as someone who goes around the world and talks about FreeCAD. So that's what I'm doing today. So FreeCAD, I think probably everybody in the room certainly, but probably also everybody who is bothered to click on this live stream is familiar with it, but this is open source computer-aided design and manufacturing. Development of FreeCAD began in 2001, so we've been around for quite a long time. It is fundamentally, you could think of it as being a graphical and Python interface to the underlying CAD kernel, which is called Open Cascade. We have a license. It's an open source product. It's a license that's really designed for flexibility. This is an LGPL license. You are welcome to use FreeCAD as the basis of your commercial products and that sort of thing. So we have a very highly flexible license. We did release, finally, after like 24 years of development, we hit the 1.0 milestone in November of 2024. The current active release is 1.1.3. But version 26.3 is coming in the fourth quarter of 2026. And I actually got the year right on this one. It was very exciting. All right. So I want to talk a little bit today just about what you can expect to be coming in FreeCAD 26.3. And of course, probably the first thing that you've noticed as I've started drawing these numbers is that there's a new version numbering scheme. I don't know if this actually counts as a highlight, but I get a lot of questions about it. So I thought maybe I'd say a couple of words about what's going on with this new version numbering scheme. We are switching to Calver, so that is calendar-based versioning. So the 26 is the year that we plan on doing this release in, or really the year that we are going to make the branch in. And then the plan here is that we are going to have 3 releases per year. That is a very significant cadence increase from what we have been doing in the past. The idea here from a development standpoint is that over the last 25 or so years, we've been releasing about once per year. And that means that a release is a huge deal in FreeCAD world, both for developers, for maintainers, for users. It often involves massive changes and huge, long, multi-month, sometimes feature freezes that make everybody angry and cranky, and we take a lot of complaints, and it's a wonderful experience for everyone. And we'd really like to avoid those going forward. One of the problems that we've seen in FreeCAD is that you get closer to those projected release dates, and developers get all excited about trying to squeeze their last minute feature in before that freeze, or maybe even slightly after that freeze because their feature is extra super special and we should include it, etc. So we're trying to calm that down a little bit by doing more frequent releases. So it's not that big of a deal if you miss this feature freeze because, hey, in 4 more months, we're going to release another one. So that's the basic idea behind this switch to this Calver. So the idea is that we're going to have 3 releases per year, and the first release of any year, so in this case, it'll be like 27.1, is planned to be, we're going to focus on bug fixes in that one. And by which I mean the maintainers are going to preferentially merge bug fixes into the .1 release, and then we'll continue sort of the normal process for the 0.3 and 0.2 releases. So that doesn't mean there won't be any new features in the .1 release, but you can expect that one to focus on stability. And that's just from sort of internal mechanics of how we plan on doing it. All right? So that is why and how the new versioning scheme is going to be happening. The first actual feature, because the version probably doesn't count as a feature. So the first actual feature, the thing that I think the internet is the most excited about, and probably with good reason, is that Pierre Paddlestroke, one of our main developers, has developed the Sketcher text tool. So this is a way of putting text of any font on your system into Sketcher without going to, say, the draft workbench, etc. So you can directly put it in Sketcher. It works as a grouped sketch object. There's all kinds of wackiness happening under the scenes. It's very exciting. It took a while to get reviewed, so I'd also like to shout out anyone who reviewed this or helped test this. This was very much a team effort, so Paddlestroke did the hard part. He did the work. He got this written written. It's an amazing piece of code, but there were a lot of people involved in getting this across the finish line. So if you haven't checked out the weekly dev builds and want to see what this is doing, we have a new Sketcher text tool, and it is really exciting. So congratulations to everyone on the team for getting this one out the door. Okay. Next up, we have fine-grained recomputes. So I've gone from something that's fairly visual, you can see it, to something that is not visual at all. I was completely unable to come up with a visual aid for this one. This one does get a little bit technical, but I'm going to hand wave it by saying that basically you're getting faster, less frequent recomputes, that you shouldn't have to recompute every single change that happens to every single thing. This is going to come up, yes, applause from the audience here. If you use spreadsheets, this is probably going to be the biggest change for you, because if you change any stupid little thing on a spreadsheet right now, of course the whole document has to recompute, and it's incredibly frustrating, and you want to punch a developer in the face, and please don't. And thank you to Peter Hema, who is the developer who did this work. I don't recall, he had some funding from a couple of different organizations, including the FreeCAD Project Association and NLNet, to do some work on various projects, but thanks to Peter for this. This is a big quality of life improvement for a lot of people, so we're pretty excited that we got this one into 26.3 as well. Okay. Next up, we have asynchronous document recompute. Another I have no visual aid for you, and I'm sorry. But this one basically is going to keep the UI more responsive. It's doing the recomputes in the background so that when you click on things, something actually happens and you don't, again, want to punch a developer in the face. So thank you very much to Tritau, who did the work on this one. Next up, new defaults in Sketcher. I know, again, this one seems like it's a little bit lame, but the grid is now on by default, and that is going to affect a lot of people. So if you despise the Sketcher grid, hey, you can still turn it off. Don't worry, it's in the preferences. Welcome to open source, everything's in the preferences, right? So you can still turn it off, but it is on by default. But the next thing that is on by default is make internals. And this was a big deal. Make internals existed in 1.1, but we didn't feel real good about its stability in the 1.1 release, so it's off by default in 1.1. We are flipping that. We feel much better about its stability now, so it is on by default in the 26.3 release. So again, you can disable this. Don't worry, don't panic, don't yell or throw things at me. You can disable it, but this is basically how, as far as I'm aware, every other CAD package was already doing this. So this is bringing unity to the world of computer-aided design, I think. All right, and some more applause. Thank you. All right, multi-file editing. So this is essentially that if you have an open task panel, you're working in Sketch or working on a sketch, you can now actually, what a concept, right? You can open another file now. All right, it's incredible, it's amazing. This was Google Summer of Code funded, actually, so this was a pretty exciting and one of our most successful Google Summer of Code projects, worked on by Theo VT. So thanks very much to Theo and to Google for funding this, and to everyone who helped review it, because again, this was very much a big team project. Theo did the hard part of actually writing the code, but there's been a lot of testing going into this, so thanks to everyone on the team who has helped with testing this one. All right. Sketcher anti-flip hardening. Okay, so yay, math. Yes, there's math involved. I'm not going to show you the equations, though. Don't panic. No one's crying yet, and I don't want that to start now. So the basic idea here is, if you've ever used Sketcher and you know this idea of constraints, that some constraints have two valid solution points, right? This side or this side, etc. And so there's been some work done to essentially add a sign to the distance constraint under the hood. You don't have to worry about that as a user, but it makes it much less likely that you're going to have things that result in flipping. And so we've made this change that is supposed to make that happen less. The basic idea here is that, for example, if you say that that line and that line, the two lines there at the edge of those rectangles, are 10 millimeters from one another, well, yes, as a user, you look at it, you set it 10 millimeters like that. Of course, that's where it belongs. But mathematically, it is perfectly valid to have the other solution. The lines are still 10 millimeters from one another. All right? And so the work that's been done here was to make sure that that is less susceptible to happening. And this is also work by Theo VT. So thank you very much, Theo. All right, more, yes, and that one absolutely deserves applause. It's really nice work. And we did get that so that if you load up an old file that did not have signed constraints, that it should add a sign to the constraint based on the original geometry. So your old files, if you open them and resave them, you won't be able to open them in an old version anymore because that constraint is going to have a sign, but on the plus side, your old file will also benefit from this. So it is not just for new files, it is also for old files if you open them and resave them. Okay, next up, TechDraw redraw speed. There's not very much to say or show about this one. It's faster. So, yay, it's faster. Thanks very much to Louis Gombert, that is LGT2X on GitHub, who did the work here. Also, I should point out that LGT2X, who is an amazing human being, and you have probably encountered him, he is now a maintainer. So congratulations to Louis, who is the first, or the most recent new maintainer added to the maintainer core in FreeCAD. All right. The toponaming Python API, another obviously no visual aid available for this one, all right? So the topological naming problem is sort of the scourge of parametric CAD. This was the big 1.0 release of FreeCAD. The reason we decided to call it 1.0 was a ton of work by a whole bunch of different developers to integrate Real Thunder's original work from the Link Stage 3 branch or fork into mainline FreeCAD so that we were more resistant to this topological naming problem, and this is now also available via the Python API, so the add-ons can also benefit from this work. This is work that was done by Dr. Who 495, who has done a bunch of actual toponaming work and is working on, right now, the toponaming V2 algorithm. That probably isn't going to make it into 26.3, but we are continuing to actively work. We understand, of course, the topological naming mitigation is a mitigation, and there's always room for improvement. Developers know that, right? So yes, you're still experiencing it, and we recognize that, and we also hate it, don't worry. So there is more progress happening on that, both in terms of making it actually function for more geometry, but also making it more efficient, making it take less storage, making it take less compute, et cetera. So that is ongoing work. Okay, next up, Cosmetic threads. The basic idea here is that if you actually model that helix of a threaded hole, that's quite expensive. You're adding a ton of geometry to that, and not only does it take a lot of redraw, but often you don't actually want it, right? So the basic idea is if you are, say, working in your CAM and you want to pop a hole in something and you're going to thread it later, you don't really want those threads actually in the model. You really just want something that indicates that that hole is going to be threaded. If you're 3D printing, this is a different story. You do want to print those threads, so of course we have to keep that around. But basically, if you don't want to actually model the threads now, you don't have to, and that's always been the case, but you can still tell the hole is threaded because we now have a texture on there, and the texture is really quite cleverly developed to basically actually show you the real geometry of the thread, the correct right-handed versus left-handed, the correct thread spacing, all of that stuff. So it's really nice work that's been done by Alfrix, and I've just got an example here because this one is a little visual. So that's what you would have on the left-hand side there if you had really done the threads, if you actually modeled the threads, and on the right-hand side is the exact same thread profile, but shown just as a texture. And that texture is being calculated based on the real thread. It's not just that we, statically calculated a texture and barfed it on there. So there's a little more work than that, so thanks Alfrix for doing that work. So very cool. Okay, CAM. This is, I'm trying to make sure that CAM gets a little bit of love here because the CAM team has done so much work between 1.1 and 26.3, and they don't necessarily get all that much attention. I've got several CAM developers in the room here. I've got a room full of really incredible machine tools here out at Knox Makers. They've got an incredible makerspace here in Knoxville, and the CAM team has been busting their butts to put features in there. This is just a little one. The CAM simulator used to pop in its own window in 1.1, and in 26.3 now it's actually a full-fledged MDI window, so it works a little nicer, just a quality of life improvement there. Okay, another simple quality of life improvement coming in 26.3 is the attachment dialog on a new sketch. So I think Max Wolfinger did this work. That's at MaxWXYZ on GitHub. And he's made it so that when you hit the new sketch button, you get some options about how exactly you would like it to be attached. And so this can help you, in part, it just helps you with discoverability. There are lots of different ways of attaching a sketch to a face. This is helping you discover that there are lots of different ways of attaching a sketch to a face. All right. Mass properties. This is another one of those. Every other CAD package on planet Earth always provided this. Always is a stretch, but right, everybody else has always been able to do this, to give you the volume and the mass and the density and the surface area and the center of volume and the center of gravity and the inertia, all of these sorts of things that Open Cascade has been able to calculate this stuff. We just haven't really made it available to you. So thanks to the work by Morten Vaho and I have no idea if that's how Morten pronounces his name, by the way. So sorry, Morten, if I've just butchered it. But at any rate, Morten has done this work where you can get all of that information, and that is not via a third-party add-on. That is now baked directly into FreeCAD. So thanks for that work. All right. Another one of those, wait, you didn't already have that things is the dragging box selection in 3D view. And yes, we did always have this in the sense that there has always been box selection, but it's always been a dedicated tool. You had to go out and you had to select the box select tool or know the keyboard shortcut to the box select tool and do box select. And that's a little bit abnormal. So what this is doing basically is if it doesn't conflict with the keys that you're already using to do your rotations and zooming and all of that. So for the navigation styles where it could be made to not conflict, box select just exists and works exactly the way you expect it to. Probably the way you were already trying to use it the first time you tried it and it didn't work and you wanted to punch a developer in the face. Perhaps you're finding a theme here. We don't like getting punched in the face, and so we are trying to make all of these very simple quality of life improvements that it turns out maybe aren't actually that simple. So I think this work, I didn't attribute it here. I think this is Tritau's work, but I'm really sorry if I am misattributing that. So if it is not Tritau, please feel free to put a comment on this video, whoever it actually was. So, okay. CAM, Feeds and Speeds Helper. I had to ask the CAM team a little bit about this one. This is a tool to set the spindle RPM and material feed rate, and I guess I was a little confused by this yesterday because it didn't seem like that was that big of a deal, but they tell me that actually that is a big deal. This is something that is quite challenging to do. There's a lot to it that involves lots of physics and probably math and things that I'm not smart enough to understand. Fortunately, I've got several people in the room here, including Sliptonic, Brad Collette, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the one who is mostly responsible for this work. Yes, okay, great. Yes. So at any rate, getting the Feeds and Speeds helper in, so thanks to Sliptonic for that work in CAM. All right. Assembly, we have finally at long last in the 1.0 release, we do have a built-in assembly workbench that does a lot of the sorts of assembly tasks, and Paddle Stroke, Pierre-Louis Boyer, continues to do work on the assembly workbench, and so one of the things, or two of the things, I suppose, since I put both snapshots and video export on here. Oh, I thought that was a video. There we go. Okay, so yay, CAM, assembly, you've already known, can make these little animations. Now you can actually write those animations to disk so that you can share them with other people. Another sort of course it does that feature, but somebody had to actually write that, and that somebody was Paddle Stroke. So thank you to Pierre for doing this work. It works wonderfully. All right. Maybe. All right. With apologies here, this is another one of those. I am not an expert in the building information management architecture field. In fact, I know absolutely nothing about it and have only once accidentally opened the BIM workbench, I believe. So I can't really explain this feature, but I know that the BIM folks have also been doing a ton of work. I think this one is by Roy043. The BIM and draft workbenches see lots of work by lots of, well, really by not lots of folks, but by a few folks. Roy043 most prominently. So thanks, Roy, for doing the work on this, and I'm sorry to give your work short shrift because I personally don't know anything about it, but I didn't want it to go unmentioned. So for those of you who are BIM and draft users, you now have this editable baseless wall endpoints feature, which I think is simply that the wall is now by itself fully parametric. You don't have to have some other feature that the wall is attached to. I've put Fergo 16's explanation from the pull request on here for those of you who would like to understand in more detail something that I don't know anything about. So, but anyway, thanks for everyone who is working on these workbenches. Okay, Open Cascade 8 compatibility. This isn't really such a user-facing thing, but for developers, this is a big deal. Open Cascade 8 was released just a couple of months ago, and Peter Hema, among several others, has been doing a ton of work interfacing with the Open Cascade team, most notably Dimitri over there, and we've been working very closely with Open Cascade to try to make sure that we are getting compatible with their latest version. So you can build FreeCAD against Open Cascade 8. It does work. I highly recommend using the very recent 8.0.1 release if you are building this yourself, if you use step files, because there's a step file bug in the 8.0.0 release, and you'll discover that you can't use them correctly. So if you use step files and you care about that, make sure you're using 8.0.1 or at least 8.0.0p1. And you can build against Open Cascade 8, and this means that FreeCAD users are going to be able to benefit. We are really excited. I know that the Open Cascade team is working right now on fillets, and that work is not done yet. Yes. But they are working on it. I know they are working on it. So fillets are going to be getting improved in the near term. This is not like decades away. We are very excited that there is ongoing work to make the fillets a much more stable process. And obviously, we are all going to benefit from that. But that requires us to support Open Cascade 8. So we do now. All right. CAM, rotary surface operation. So this is basically, if you've got a fourth axis on your mill, you now have access to being able to do these sort of rotary operations. Brad tells me that it can go in either direction. In my picture here, it's showing it more like a lathe where it's going around, but apparently you can also operate the tool in the other direction. So for those of you who are doing CAM and have access to that fourth axis, I'm really jealous because that's a pretty cool machine you've got, and B, congratulations, you've got some really cool new features here. Brad, who did this work? Is this?
I did, well, this is largely a refactor of work that was already in the surfacing operation, and then so a refactor and massive rewrite.
Great, refactor and massive rewrite of stuff that actually already existed, but I think you have Brad Sliptonic to thank for that being in there. So excellent work. Very exciting. There is another workbench that I have not mentioned at all that has seen a ton of work over the last year, but alas, our fellow YouTubers aren't really necessarily covering this. It's a fairly advanced topic, but I want to make sure that we get a shout out to the finite element method workbench team. This is mostly Mario Alexis 84 and FEA-Eng who have just been absolutely kicking butt, getting tons and tons of feature refinements into the finite element workbench. So I'm calling out just a few of them here, but to me the FEM workbench is one of the most incredible things in FreeCAD, because if you want to do finite element analysis in a commercial CAD package, you cannot use the hobbyist license, right? None of them are giving this to you for free, and the not free version of FEM that they provide to you is actually very not free. It is incredibly expensive to get access to this in any commercial package. Now, FEM is not for the faint of heart. This is a complicated, difficult thing, and understanding the results you're getting probably requires some additional analysis. So I don't mean to say that anyone should be able to just click the Analyze button and figure out exactly whether your piece of furniture is going to shatter when you put something heavy on top of it. It's not quite that simple, but the FEM team has really been doing incredible work, and they've been doing work for years, but especially this last year, there's just been a ton of work going on in the FEM workbench. So anyone who's using it, you're going to be really excited about the 26.3 release, and if you're not using it, consider looking at it, because it really does provide some amazing capability that you are simply not going to get in the hobbyist versions of the commercial CAD. And even if you are buying the real license to the commercial CAD, this is almost always, in fact, maybe literally always, an additional expense on top of your license. So your engineers are going to get it for free in FreeCAD. It's cool. Okay. That is your feature roundup from 26.3. I do have a couple of other things that I'd like to mention, though. I am coming at you here live, for those of you who are watching live, hi, on the internet, live stream, very exciting. I'm coming at you here from Knoxville, Tennessee at the North American Meetup 2026. We meet up a few times a year across the world, so in South America for the first time this year in conjunction with the Continental Fab Lab Summit in Huancayo, Peru in mid-November 2026. The dates of that summit are November 11th to 13th. I don't know exactly which day we're going to be doing the FreeCAD meetup. That's going to depend a little bit on who can join me there. But if you are down in South America and would like to meet up, please reach out to me at my FreeCAD email address here, and let's talk about when is a good time there in Huancayo. That will be the first, I believe, the first in-person South American meetup, so that's pretty exciting. Every year we have a European meetup in conjunction with FOSDEM, that is the Free and Open Source Developers European Meetup. So the Friday before FOSDEM, we have FreeCAD Day. This is probably going to be the 5th of February this upcoming year, but the FOSDEM team doesn't announce their date super far in advance, like October, and so it is possible, based on historic precedent, that it would be the 29th of January instead. So keep your calendar open. Maybe just come to Brussels for the whole week and a half. It'll be great. Brussels it's not really that lovely that time of year. It's usually raining, but they have waffles and fried potato product, and who doesn't love waffles and fried potato product, whatever country you are from? So please come and join us in Brussels. All right, and we have already started talking about next year's North American meetup. So Brad has thrown the idea out there that maybe we should do this in conjunction with maybe another big open source meetup. So the Open Source 2027 meetup in the Bay Area there is going to be July 17th and 18th. So if anybody in the Bay Area is interested in helping us plan next year's FreeCAD meetup in North America, we'd be really excited to hear from you. I don't live in the Bay Area. I'm a very long way from the Bay Area. Brad is a very long way from the Bay Area, so we could use some boots on the ground out there to help us figure out whether this is actually going to be feasible. So again, shoot me an email. All right, other news from the FreeCAD world. We just had a design competition, thanks to Joe Hinchliff, who sort of ran the first iteration of this thing. So we had a 2026 design competition, and we had some entries in this thing. We partnered with LabCrafter, which was actually a really exciting way of doing this design competition. This wasn't doing some random arbitrary thing that nobody cared about. We really wanted to make sure that the results of this competition were useful to somebody, and that they were published in a way that the hardware was open source. So we required the use of one of the CERN open hardware licenses, which means that anybody who needs one of these things is going to be able to go and manufacture it without there being any crazy licensing fees or things like that. So we partnered with the Open Tools for Open Science people at LabCrafter to do this competition. And the idea was that you had to design this pinch valve thing. Design Weaver was the competition's winner this year. I'm sorry, I don't have a better image. I just scraped this one straight off the blog. But the idea here was that this is a pinch valve. And you've got a tube that runs through there, and you've got some fluid moving through that tube, and there's a little servo that actuates, or I don't think there was a rule that it had to be a servo. You had to have some kind of motor that actuated this valve. And so we've got some designs out there. They are open hardware. Anybody who wants to manufacture this thing can manufacture it. And this was, we hope, the first of many upcoming design competitions. So there will be more, and we're excited to see more participation in this. There is a cash prize. I believe it was a €500 prize to Design Weaver for this thing. So we gave prizes to the top 3 competitors, and it's a pretty decent chunk. So that was sponsored by the FPA, the FreeCAD Project Association. Also sponsored by the FreeCAD Project Association is the FPA Rewards Program. So I've got a QR code on here if you are interested, if I've got any developers. It basically amounts to €50 per bug fixed. Not every single bug is eligible for it. You have to actually join the program to see the list of eligible bugs because we were sick of all the AI slop. So AIs hadn't yet figured out how to fill out my form. They've probably figured it out now. I haven't looked today, but at any rate, you at least have to fill out a form to get yourself access to that list of bugs. So please, if you're a developer and are interested in helping, go out and look at that. Speaking of, if you are interested in helping, help is always wanted. And in an open source project, you can help, even if you are not a developer. Of course, if you are a developer, you can write code. Great, congratulations, you can write code. We would love to see your submissions. But also, if you are multilingual, we have translations into many different languages, and we are always working on those translations. If you like to write documentation, what's wrong with you? Also, Okay, if you like direct documentation, and I hear there are people out there who do that, of course we can use that. If you like to run FreeCAD, we would like your tests, and then if your tests encounter problems, if you would like to bug report those tests, we would be very happy to hear from you. Okay, that's it from me from the FreeCAD land. I am happy to take any questions. I promised Billy I would keep this to 30 minutes, and I think I nailed it. So, if there are any questions out there, I am happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will leave. Yes?
So you said how the task panel is no longer blocking when you transition between different documents.
Yes.
It's a new feature.
Right.
Is it still, how does that interface with the measure tool is basically what I'm wondering. If you have the measure tool open in one document and you go to another document and reopen that same tool, I assume that it works as you would expect.
So the question here is about how the measure tool interacts with the multi-document editing feature, and that is, can you have the measure tool available in both of those documents and have it actually work the way that it is supposed to and the way you would expect it to? And I believe the answer is yes. I don't actually have personal experience having verified that. So it is supposed to work. Let me put it that way, but I actually can't tell you for certain whether it does.
It still does consume the task panel though for within.
Yes, the measure tool consumes the task panel, but the task panel doesn't block you from switching between documents, and you can have different task panels open in different documents. So for me, this is mostly about Sketcher. I can have Sketcher open in two documents, right? But the measure tool is supposed to behave exactly the same way. All right. Thank you for joining me today. In, I think, another half an hour, we'll have another presentation from Brad. Is that right? Oh, sorry. In 1 hour, there will be a presentation from Brad. So if you're coming at me over the live stream here, tune back in an hour, and you'll get to hear about the CAM workbench. And at 2 o'clock, we have a presentation about version control, I believe. So and again, that is 2 o'clock U.S. Eastern Time. I am in the Eastern Time Zone. Yes. Yes, U.S. Eastern Time. So 2 o'clock, that is 2.5 hours from right now. All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.